The Arizona sun was a burning thing, unapologetic, unrelenting. It beat down on the blacktop of the county office parking lot where the foreclosure auction was being held. The heat shimmered in waves above the hoods of parked cars, and somewhere nearby, a fan whirred lazily from inside a portable booth. I stood still in the middle of it all, sunglasses on, hands tucked in the pockets of my navy slacks, calm as the eye of a storm. No one paid attention to me. Just another bidder, they assumed. Maybe someone fronting for a quiet investor. Maybe a silent wife helping her husband play Monopoly with other people's houses. I didn't care what they thought. I was here for one thing. One address. One reckoning. Beside me stood Amira, 63, short silver hair tucked under a rust-colored scarf, calloused hands holding a numbered bidding paddle with the kind of stillness that comes from surviving real storms. She didn't look like much, but no one there could outbid her. Not today. Not when I was whispering numbers in her ear. A man in khakis and boat shoes kept throwing us sideways glances. He wanted the property, too. Kept squinting at Amira like she was in the wrong section of the auction. He had no idea who he was standing next to. Lot number 24B, the auctioneer called. Single-family residence, 3-bed, 2-bath, zip code 85741. My heart thudded once, sharp and deep. There it was. The house they bought after leaving me. The house they built their second life in, without me. The beige one with the garden gnome I used to think looked like it was judging you. The one with the lemon tree in the back I wasn't allowed to pick from. The auctioneer started the bid low. Khaki guy raised his paddle first. Amira stayed still. I whispered, "Now." She lifted the card. No tremble, no emotion. The bid climbed fast, back and forth, back and forth. Khaki guy raised his voice once, frustrated. Amira didn't blink. I whispered the final number. The auctioneer nodded. Sold to bidder 406, just like that. It was ours. But I didn't feel like celebrating. Instead, I reached into the inside pocket of my blazer and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. Yellowed, creased a dozen times over. I kept it with me like a relic, a reminder. 1 sentence, 11 words, written in neat cursive with fading blue ink. You're 17 now, old enough to survive. That was all they left me. No money, no goodbye, no explanation. Just a sentence that sliced deeper than any blade. And now I owned the house they abandoned me for. They didn't even know it was me. Yet, the eviction notice would hit their mailbox in 3 days. Certified mail, legal language, 30 days to vacate. They'd probably stare at it in disbelief. Wonder who the buyer was. Try to call the number listed for property liaison. That number led to a voicemail box I never checked. They'd ask, who would buy our house? They'd ask, why? They wouldn't guess the answer. Because the girl they left behind didn't just survive. She learned how to rise. She learned how to become someone invisible and unstoppable. And now I was back. Back with a different name. Back with power they never saw coming. You want to know what happened? Why I vanished from their lives for nearly a decade. Why I flew across oceans without a warning just to stand here and take back the one thing they tried to erase? Then let me tell you. Let me tell you what happened when I was 17. And they left me alone in Morocco with nothing but a note. I wasn't the golden child. Not even close. I didn't play soccer or volunteer or get invited to birthday parties. I didn't win awards or make honor roll or get asked to prom. What I did, reliably, impressively, was disappoint. I had a file in the school counselor's office. Thick one. Notes scribbled in pen about missed classes, angry outbursts, a fight in the cafeteria that wasn't even my fault. At least not completely. The other girl shoved me first. I didn't make it easy. I know that. But it wasn't like I was evil, just tired of trying, of failing, of pretending like everything made sense when nothing did. My mom used to say I was born too loud for this house. She liked things neat, both the throw pillows and the emotions. My dad, he liked silence, he liked control, he liked pretending. I didn't fit into their picture. I was the smudge they couldn't Photoshop away. By the time I turned 17, I was already a problem no one wanted to solve anymore. And maybe that's what made the Morocco trip so strange. Because one morning, out of nowhere, they sat me down at the kitchen table and told me we were going on vacation. Just the 3 of us. No explanations, no lectures, just plane tickets. A reset. A clean slate. We need time together, my mom said, eyes glancing at me like I was a patient she'd already diagnosed. To start fresh, my dad added, not even looking up from his phone. I remember staring at the boarding passes like they were a trick. I didn't trust them, but I wanted to. God, I wanted to. Marrakech was color and sound and smoke and light. The streets pulsed like arteries lined with orange vendors and stray cats and the scent of cumin so thick it stuck to my hair. We rode camels, bought handmade soap, ate tagine under lanterns that turned everything gold. My mom took pictures of me smiling, even if it was fake, and posted them with captions like "Family First Hearts." It was the most peace we'd had in years. One afternoon she slipped her hand into mine while we waited for a taxi. She hadn't held my hand since I was 10. I wanted to believe. I needed to believe. So I let her. Our flight home was scheduled for a Monday. We had breakfast together at the Riyadh Inn, mint tea, warm bread, and soft cheese spread on little clay plates. My mother wore coral lipstick. She only used it on big days. Weddings, job interviews, court dates. My father didn't say much. He never did. Just stared at the paper like always, not turning a single page. Right before checkout, Mom looked up and said, "We're just going to run down to the Medina. Get you something nice for the trip back." "Be back in 15, Dad added. I nodded, barely looking up. I was texting my friend back in the States, joking about how weirdly normal the trip had been. 15 minutes passed, then 30, then an hour. I started to pace the lobby, ask the front desk if they'd seen them. "The American couple in room 204? The clerk asked, frowning. "They checked out this morning." My stomach folded in on itself. "No, they were just here," I insisted. He shook his head. "They left 2 hours ago. You're not with them?" I ran to the room. Locked. The keycard didn't work. I begged the cleaning staff to let me in. The room was empty. No suitcase, no passport, no toothbrush, no charger, no sign I'd ever been there. Even my backpack was gone. They took everything but me. I called their phones, straight to voicemail, texted. No response. I asked the front desk to call again. Nothing. I waited. 4 hours. 5. The sun dropped behind the buildings and the air smelled like spice and diesel. I wasn't crying yet. Not really. The tears came later, curled behind a crumbling stucco wall outside a closed cafe where the Wi-Fi barely reached. I sat there until my phone died in my hands, holding it like it might buzz with an explanation. It never did. The next morning I walked to the U.S. Embassy. I was numb, barely speaking, hands stuffed into my empty jacket like they might make me invisible. The woman at the desk had kind eyes but a practiced face. She listened, then typed. Typed some more. Frowned. Clicked again. "Your return flight's been canceled," she said finally. My breath caught. "You're no longer listed on their travel insurance, or their emergency contact forms." "What?" I whispered. "I'm so sorry," she said, "but there's no legal obligation. You're 17, legally old enough to be on your own." I didn't understand. They didn't forget me. They removed me. That night I went back to the Riyadh. No room, no luggage, just me, in a foreign country, holding a note I hadn't even known I had. Found tucked inside the lining of my jacket, folded so small it could have been a coin, my mother's handwriting. "You're 17 now, old enough to survive." That was it. No signature, no apology, just a fact, a command, an ending. I spent that night behind a tea house with peeling green shutters and a trash bin that radiated a little heat. I curled into my coat, knees pressed to my chest, listening to the sounds of a world moving on without me. Motorbikes, laughter, someone's radio playing a love song in Arabic. The sky turned navy, then black, then gray again. I didn't sleep. Not really. I just counted my heartbeats until morning came and I was still there. Still breathing, still left behind. The third day was the hardest. I hadn't eaten anything but tap water and the crust of a discarded sandwich someone had left on a plastic chair outside a hookah cafe. My body felt hollow, like a balloon left out in the sun. Every step was a negotiation. My stomach snarled so loud a child on the tram flinched. I kept walking. Past rows of stalls, alleys that reeked of fish guts and motor oil, doorways where men smoked and watched the world sag past. My shoes had holes in the soles. My lips had cracked. I smelled like sweat and failure and the kind of fear you can't name. No one looked twice. I was invisible. A ghost in jeans and a tourist t-shirt clinging to the edges of a city that didn't have space for ghosts. I tried begging once. A man in a pressed polo shirt eating pastries at a cafe waved me away like I was a fly. A woman dropped a coin in my hand, then quickly sanitized her fingers. After that, I stopped asking. I stopped meeting people's eyes. It was easier to become no one. The trash bins behind restaurants were guarded like vaults. I learned that the hard way, chased off by a teenage busboy with a mop and a mouthful of curses I didn't need to translate. There were other girls on the streets, younger than me. Older, too. Some of them looked like they belonged there. Some looked like I did, broken and trying not to show it. I didn't talk to them. I didn't trust anyone. I barely trusted myself. By the second night, I started hallucinating. A drip of condensation on a window looked like a tear on someone's cheek. A ringing bicycle bell made me flinch like a siren. I kept walking, not toward anything, just away. I spent the night before behind a vendor cart covered in blue tarps, curled into myself as the wind picked up and the city exhaled. I didn't cry anymore. That part had burned out. Now I just stared, at the shadows, at the cracks in the pavement, at nothing. By morning something in me cracked. Not loudly, not like glass, more like paper worn too thin, folded one too many times until it simply gave up. That's when I saw it. A bakery. Set into the side of a faded peach building with ivy crawling up one window and a chalkboard sign out front smudged from the night dew. The back door was ajar, just barely, and a tray of long golden loaves sat steaming on a table nearby. No one in sight. I didn't think. I moved. Feet light, heart hammering, I reached for the smallest loaf, just enough to kill the hunger clawing up my spine. My fingers brushed the crust. Then a hand closed around my wrist. Hard, rough, strong. I froze. I didn't even breathe. I was caught. I was going to be thrown into a cell, deported, erased again. I could already hear the shouting, the sirens, the words I wouldn't understand. My eyes darted up. The woman staring back at me wasn't a cop. She wasn't shouting. She looked disappointed, which somehow hurt worse. She was maybe in her 60s. Silver hair pulled into a messy bun streaked with flour. Her apron was stained and her hands were dusted with dough. Her eyes, dark, sharp, framed by lines that said she'd seen everything twice, cut right through me. She didn't ask who I was. She didn't demand an ID. She just said in slow English with a Moroccan lilt, "If you're hungry, you work." Her name was Amira. She didn't offer it. I found it on a tag sewn into the edge of her apron later that week. She didn't ask for mine either. Instead, she handed me a broom and pointed at the flour trail on the tiled floor. I swept. Then she had me rinse trays, stack boxes, carry sacks of flour from the front to the back. My arms shook, my legs wobbled. I didn't care. When the work was done, she gave me a folded blanket and pointed toward a corner of the storage room. That was it. No lecture, no threats, just a blanket. And for the first time in 3 nights, I slept on something softer than concrete. The bakery didn't have a name I could read. The script was Arabic, but every morning people lined up before sunrise, murmuring greetings as the smell of cardamom and yeast drifted into the street. Amira moved like a machine, efficient, fast, graceful. I followed her movements, memorized them. She never smiled, but she never raised her voice either. Each morning she let me stay. Each night she let me sleep. That was all I needed. I learned to mop without streaks, to knead dough until my wrists burned, to time the ovens by smell, not sight. Amira didn't talk much, but sometimes, late at night, while wiping down the counters or prepping for the next day, she'd murmur to herself, or maybe to me. One evening, as we shaped braided loaves in the quiet, she glanced at my hands and said, "My daughter had fingers like yours, always restless, always smelled like yeast." I didn't ask what happened to her daughter. She didn't offer. But from that night on, she started leaving the ugly loaves, the misshapen, overbaked, or cracked ones, wrapped in brown paper beside the cot in the storage room, like clockwork, like ritual. Sometimes I'd find a small square of dark chocolate hidden beneath the paper wrap. Other times it was a clean pair of socks or a folded towel that smelled like jasmine. She never mentioned them, never made it a thing. Just left them there like the way you leave a light on for someone who hasn't made it home yet. Once when I burned my hand on a hot tray and tried to hide it, she said nothing. Just handed me a small tin of balm the next morning. The label was worn off. I still don't know what was in it, but it worked, and when I started coughing from the cold, a scarf appeared on the edge of my cot. She didn't ask if I needed help. She gave it before I knew how to ask. As if love, for people like me, could only arrive in silence. I never asked her why she helped me, and she never asked why I needed it. There was something sacred in that unspoken agreement. She saw the ghost I was, and let me exist anyway. On the 7th night, I sat on the cot, the blanket pulled up to my chin, one of the loaves still warm in my lap. The wind howled against the metal shutters. I closed my eyes and whispered something I hadn't said in days. Thank you. I didn't know who I was saying it to. The stars, the bread, the woman who never asked me to explain myself. Maybe all of them, because this wasn't a home, but it wasn't hell. And that somehow was enough. The laptop was cracked down the middle, screen chipped at one corner, battery swollen and flaking like old plastic. Someone had tossed it behind a repair shop near the end of the street, beside a bin filled with broken radios and cables that curled like vines. It looked like trash. But to me, it looked like a door. I hauled it back to the bakery under my jacket, wiping it down with a rag soaked in vinegar and dish soap. For 2 days, I tinkered with it in the back room between shifts, plugging it into broken outlets and begging it to live. Amira watched once, said nothing, and walked away. And when it finally powered on and screen flickering, keys sticky, fan wheezing like it had asthma, I almost cried. The Wi-Fi from the tea shop 2 blocks away barely reached the edge of the bakery. But at 3 a.m., when the city slept and the ovens cooled, I sat on the tile floor beside the fridge, knees pulled to my chest, eyes glowing from the only window I had left to the world. I signed up for a GEZD course that offered English modules for international students. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was ashamed, but because it felt like mine. I studied next to sacks of flour and humming compressors. I did algebra while the scent of cinnamon rolls rose thick into the air. My geometry notes were scribbled on the backs of receipt rolls. I memorized vocabulary lists while scrubbing ovens, whispering synonyms like spells. Sometimes I'd nod off mid-lesson, forehead resting against the metal cooler door, and wake up with equations smudged on my cheek. It was quiet work. But it gave me something I hadn't had since the day my parents disappeared. Direction. One morning I found a wrinkled business journal left behind on a chair at the tea shop. The front page had a headline about a shipping company based out of Athens. Small, nearly bankrupt, but undergoing internal restructuring. Something about the wording caught me. I read the article 5 times. Then I searched the company online. It was public. The stock price was laughably low. I didn't know much yet, but I knew enough to see an opportunity. I took the 200 euros I'd been saving to buy new shoes and made the leap. 2 weeks later, it tripled. That was the moment I stopped breathing like a ghost. I started reading everything I could get my hands on. PDFs from abandoned college forums, subreddits buried 3 layers deep, financial blogs written in broken English by anonymous users in Estonia, YouTube playlists that explained market models with hand-drawn graphs and dry jokes. I devoured it all. I borrowed old cookbooks from the bakery shelves and used the margins to take notes. Covered the inside of flour boxes with formulas. I used what I learned at night to sharpen what I saw during the day. Logistics, ratios, inventory, profit margins. The bakery became my classroom. The streets were my market. One night, Amira walked in while I had 5 browser tabs open, a spreadsheet half built across the screen, and a graph drawn on the side of the freezer in chalk. She stared for a long second, arms crossed, then said, "You play accountant now?" I shrugged, then smiled. Something like that. She didn't press. Just nodded once, and went back to prepping dough for the morning. Before she left the room, she paused at the door, eyes still in the freezer where I'd sketched out supply chain ratios next to tomorrow's pastry list. "Your hands shake less," she said softly. "You used to drop everything you touched." I didn't know what to say. She turned away again, but this time her voice followed her out. "If you're going to break the world, break it smart." That was Amira. Never a compliment without a warning. Never a warning without a thread of belief. I erased the graph that night, but not before taking a photo, because that was the first time I realized she saw what I was becoming. And she wasn't afraid of it. That was Amira. She never needed explanations, just results. I took bigger risks, not reckless ones, measured, studied, calculated ones. I bought micro shares in emerging green startups. I beta tested fintech platforms from Nairobi. I invested in Latin American food supply chains. Some flopped, others exploded. By 20, I had clients. By 21, I had a digital identity strong enough to pass as legitimate. By 22, I had investors. I never used my real name, never posted a selfie, never told anyone where I was from. The version of me online was polished, mysterious, efficient, and completely untouchable. No one knew the girl behind the bakery was running a six-figure consulting side hustle between scrubbing pans and bagging croissants. I created a program, just a short one, to teach young, undocumented girls how to earn anonymously. Freelance writing, translation, crypto basics, digital security, enough to give them something no one could take. Freedom. A chance, like Amira gave me. She never asked how much I made, but she noticed the small changes. The new coffee grinder in the kitchen, the phone I bought her last Eid, the quiet way her gas bill disappeared from the counter one afternoon. She didn't say thank you. She just looked at me one morning and said, "You walk different now." I raised an eyebrow. "Less like you're waiting for something to fall on your head." I laughed, a little stunned. But she wasn't wrong, because I wasn't surviving anymore. I was building. And the thing about building from nothing is this. You remember every screw, every crack you patched, every tool you learned to use by breaking it first. You don't forget where you started, but you learn to shape where you're going. The morning it happened was unremarkable. Sunlight streamed in through the narrow kitchen window. Amira was making coffee, humming a tune I'd heard 100 times but never learned the words to. I was reviewing client notes, sprawled at the small wooden table with my laptop open, half listening to a podcast in the background. Then Amira slid a newspaper across the table. Not a word. Just a tap of her index finger on the lower corner of the page. Her nail landed on a black and white foreclosure notice printed in dense type, squeezed between two ads for furniture outlets. I read the address once, then again, and a third time, just to be sure. It felt like looking at an obituary for a version of the world I was never invited to. I traced the numbers with my eyes, numbers I hadn't said out loud in nearly a decade, but that still lives somewhere under my ribs. The zip code alone made my chest tighten. The street name made my palms sweat. And the city. God, the city. I used to dream about that house. Not because I missed it, but because in those dreams, it was haunted. Not by ghosts, but by the version of me they refused to see. I saw flashes. My dad raking leaves in the front yard while I watched from the window. My mom hanging fairy lights on the porch, the kind I once begged her to string in my room. The lemon tree, still too young to bear fruit the last time I saw it, now twisted and tall, its roots probably choking out the patch of grass I was never allowed to sit on. That house was never built for me. It was built after me, because of me, without me. The zip code punched me first, then the street name, then the house number. Everything inside me froze. I hadn't said those numbers out loud in years. But they were carved into me, like old scars you don't remember getting until they itch in the dark. It was their house, the one they bought after Morocco. After me. After they removed me from their life and started a new one. Clean, presentable, just the two of them, without the inconvenience of a teenage daughter unraveling at the seams. And now it was up for auction. I didn't say anything. Amira didn't press. She just poured coffee into 2 chipped mugs, pushed one toward me, and walked out onto the balcony like nothing had happened. But something had happened. The ground didn't shift. The sky didn't split open. Just a quiet click, like the sound of a door unlocking. Later that night, I found the deed listing online. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, beige stucco, cracked driveway, front yard with a dying lemon tree. Photos were grainy, but sharp enough to trigger every buried thing. I remembered that tree. I once fell out of it when I was 10, scraped my chin and split my lip. My mom screamed, not because I was hurt, but because I'd bled in her new sandals. I remembered the front door with its chipped green paint. My dad used to tell me not to slam it. I remembered the living room with the shelf of family photos. Ones I'd never been in. Not once. That house wasn't a home. It was a monument to their ability to pretend I never existed. I booked the flight that night. Not out of revenge, not for closure. I just needed to be there. Needed to stand on the pavement and look at the thing they built without me, and take it. The auction was held in the parking lot of a county courthouse in southern Arizona. It was sunny, of course. Everything in that part of the state was sun-bleached. Roads, cars, people. The heat made the air shimmer, and the attendees came dressed for it. Golf polos, linen slacks, baseball caps. Some held tablets. Others clutched printouts with red circles and highlighted estimates. No one looked at me twice. I wore sunglasses and a navy blazer, hair pinned back tight, professional, forgettable. Amira stood beside me, silent as always, holding the numbered bidder's card. We hadn't spoken much on the plane, didn't need to. She knew why we were here, and she was with me anyway. When the auctioneer called out the property, my throat went dry. Lot 24F. Starting bid, $118,000. Someone near the front raised their card immediately, an older man in khakis and wraparound shades. His voice was loud when he told the woman next to him, "Great location. Perfect for a rental flip." Amira didn't blink. I whispered a number in her ear. She raised the card. Bidding jumped, back and forth, fast. Khaki's guy looked annoyed, scanning the crowd like he couldn't figure out who was challenging him. He never looked our way, not once. It ended quickly. Sold. To bidder 173. Hours, just like that. The silence that followed felt louder than applause. Amira lowered the paddle and exhaled slowly through her nose. No smile, no high five. Just a quiet nod. Business, as always. I didn't smile either. Instead, I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and pulled out the same scrap of paper I'd carried for years. The one from Morocco. The one I found stuffed in my coat pocket the day my parents vanished. You're 17 now, old enough to survive. I unfolded it, smoothed it against my knee, stared at the handwriting until my vision blurred. Then I whispered, barely audible, "And now, I'm 17 and a half, and I own your house." We didn't stay long, didn't linger for photos or signatures. Everything was already in place. Wired transfers, corporate registration, clean, untraceable names. Legally, I was just a quiet business entity from out of state. No one would know unless I wanted them to. And I didn't. Not yet. That night, back at the hotel, I stood on the balcony while Amira dozed in the armchair behind me, a blanket tucked over her knees, TV still glowing softly. The stars were hard to see through the city haze, but I knew they were there, just like I'd always been, even when they acted like I was gone, even when they bet on me never coming back. They were wrong. I didn't need to come home. I needed to own what home had meant all along. Power, control, and finally, choice. The letter hit their mailbox on a Tuesday. Certified mail, plain envelope, legal print, 30 days to vacate. I imagined them sitting in that beige kitchen, jaws tightening, eyes darting to one another, wondering how, wondering who, wondering if it was a mistake. It wasn't. 2 days later, the lawyer called. He asked to speak with the current property owner on behalf of my parents, said they were willing to negotiate, asked if a meeting could be arranged. He assumed Amira was the owner. She didn't correct him. She just wrote the time and place down on a sticky note, peeled it off, and handed it to me. "They want to meet," she said. "Private, neutral ground?" I folded the note in half and tucked it into my pocket. Let them. We chose a small real estate office on the edge of town. Neutral, quiet. Glass walls, frosted for privacy. No press, no audience. Just 4 chairs, a rectangular table, and the weight of 10 years between us. I arrived 10 minutes early. Navy suit, no jewelry, hair pulled back top tight, sunglasses still on, not hiding, just unreadable. When they walked in, I didn't stand. My mother was first. Oversized sunglasses, beige cardigan, the kind of outfit meant to say fragile. My father trailed behind, older than I remembered, holding a cracked leather folder to his chest like a shield. They sat across from me. Didn't recognize me. Not at first. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," my mother said, voice clipped but careful. My father nodded once, eyes still scanning the table. I didn't speak. Not yet. Instead, I reached up, slow and deliberate, and removed my sunglasses. My mother's face drained of color. Her lips parted like a word had gotten stuck in her throat. My father blinked twice, then looked down. Silence cracked through the room like lightning in a dry field. "You left me," I said quietly. "In a foreign country, with no money, no ID, no goodbye." My mother's hand twitched on the folder. "We thought," she started, "we thought you'd hate us less if we just disappeared." I let that hang. Then, "So, you erased me?" Her mouth opened again. Shut. Opened. "You were impossible to live with," she said at last. "Always dramatic. Always fighting. We were drowning. You were dragging us down." I nodded once. Slow. "You were supposed to be the lifeboat," I said. "Not the ones who threw me overboard." My father still hadn't looked up. "Say something," I said, voice flat. "Look at me and say it wasn't your choice." He opened his mouth, closed it. Fingers clutched the edge of the folder tighter. "Your mother thought..." I don't care what she thought, I snapped. He flinched. You didn't stop her, I said. You let her pack the bags, cancel my ticket, leave me in a place where I didn't speak the language, where I had no name. His voice, when it came, was small, brittle. I didn't think you'd survive. I leaned back, calm, measured. Well, I said. I did. I slid a folder across the table. The deed, signed, notarized, legal. Now I own the house you live in. My mother blinked hard. You're bluffing. I didn't flinch. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the original contract, notarized, witnessed, date-stamped with the county seal. My father leaned forward. His eyes scanned the paper like he was searching for a loophole, a name, something to disprove what he was looking at. He didn't find it. This is legal? He whispered. I nodded. This is the law. That was when Amira stepped in, clipboard in hand, hair tied back, no apron, no flour dust, just the presence of someone who knew exactly where the lines were drawn and how to enforce them. She walked to the head of the table and placed 2 thick envelopes in front of them. Here are your formal notices, she said. 30 days to vacate, final inspection scheduled. Any damage or unauthorized alterations will be documented. My mother stared at the envelope like it might catch fire. My father finally spoke. You're serious. I didn't blink. Deadly. Amira stepped in from the hallway, clipboard in hand and professional, cold. You'll need to surrender the keys within 30 days, she said. You'll receive the formal move-out timeline by the end of the week. My mother turned to her, then back to me. You can't do this, she hissed. We're your parents. I stared at her. Remember, you were my parents, and you made your decision. Her voice cracked. She reached across the table, fingers splayed. I was scared, she whispered. You were breaking down, and I didn't know how to help. You didn't have to fix me, I said. You just had to stay. Tears welled up in her eyes. Real? Maybe. But I'd seen her cry before. Always at the most convenient moments. The performance she leaned on when things got too messy. I didn't move. Amira placed an envelope in front of them. These are the legal instructions, she said. I suggest you read them thoroughly. My father still hadn't spoken again. His eyes had gone glassy, lost. But I didn't feel sorry for him, not anymore. I stood, pushed in my chair, adjusted my jacket. My mother called out, Wait, why now? Why come back after all these years? I paused at the door, looked over my shoulder. Because I didn't need you to come back, I said. I just needed you to know. I did. Outside, the sun was sharp on the pavement. Amira joined me a moment later, silent as ever. We didn't speak until we reached the car. She turned the key, then looked over at me. They won't understand, she said. They're not supposed to, I replied. And I meant it. Because this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about teaching them a lesson. It was about witnessing, letting them see clearly, finally, what survival looked like when no one thought you'd make it. We didn't keep the house the way it was. That was never the plan. The day after the move-out was finalized, I walked through each room with a notepad in one hand and a black marker in the other. I didn't take inventory of what was left behind. I made a list of what needed to be erased. The live, laugh, love signs came down first, then the silk flowers in chipped vases, the beige curtains, the family portraits without me in them. I stripped it all away. Not in anger. In intention. We painted the siding a warm, earthy gray. The tile in the kitchen, cracked and curling at the corners, was replaced with soft oak laminate. The overhead light in the hallway that used to flicker? Gone. Swapped for a dimmable fixture that made the walls feel less like a waiting room and more like dusk in late spring. The master bedroom became a dorm-style room with 2 sturdy bunk beds, 4 girls at a time. Each bed had a nameplate slot, a storage drawer, a lockbox. Every new arrival got their own key. No questions asked. The living room was quiet most days, filled with books and blankets and one long couch that sagged just enough to feel like it forgave you for sitting on it. The rug was mismatched. The shelves weren't level, but it was soft, safe, lived in. It didn't have to be perfect, it just had to be possible. Amira called it the second door. When I asked her why, she shrugged like it was obvious. Not everyone gets to walk through the first one, she said. She started teaching again. Not full classes, nothing official, just Wednesdays. She ran baking sessions for the girls who stayed with us. Some came curious, some came silent. Some didn't know what flour was. Amira didn't care. She didn't teach them how to bake to turn them into chefs. She taught them how to knead dough without fear, how to mix without measuring perfectly, how to open an oven without flinching. One day I heard her say, "I'm not here to teach you bread. I'm here to show you that your hands can make something rise." The first open house was in early spring. 6 girls showed up that week. One wouldn't make eye contact. One cried when we handed her a pair of clean socks. 2 shared a twin bed the first night, not because we ran out of space, but because they didn't trust the silence of being alone. We didn't rush them, didn't give speeches, just left out bread and tea in a bathroom with a working lock, and light. So much light. In every room, even the closets, even the hallway, even under the sink, because we knew what it felt like to search for yourself in the dark and not find anything staring back. We hung no rules on the wall. Just one sentence stenciled above the door frame in tiny letters. Here, you don't owe anyone a version of yourself you built to survive. Some girls stayed for a week. Some stayed for 3 months. Some never spoke a word about what brought them here. We didn't need them to. Our job wasn't to fix. It was to witness, to make room, to hold space, to say simply, with everything we did, "You're not alone anymore." One night, a few months in, I stood on the back porch, the same one my parents once decorated with string lights and a doormat that said, "Home is where the heart is." There were no lights now, just moonlight and the hum of a dishwasher from inside. Through the window I saw a girl with short pink hair brushing her teeth in the hallway mirror. Another was curled up on the couch with a novel, her legs tangled in a fleece blanket. Someone had braided a crown into her hair. And in the kitchen, Amira was teaching a third girl how to use the espresso machine. Her hands moved slowly over the buttons, not guiding, but showing. "This is yours now. You're allowed to learn it." I stepped inside, set a new loaf of bread on the table, and sat on the floor, leaning against the bookshelf we'd built from the old crates. The air smelled like lavender and warm sugar. Somewhere in the distance, someone laughed. Not forced, not careful, just real, loud, ugly, beautiful. And I smiled. I used to think survival meant never needing anyone again. Now I know better. Survival is the crack you crawl through when the house collapses. But home. Home is the place you build when you realize just cracks can be filled, that walls can be repainted, that doors can open again, not the first one, the second, the one you create, for yourself. And for anyone who never got the first. This isn't just a home, I whispered to no one. It's where we all begin again.